I'm joined now by media writer for The Australian, Sophie Ellsworth, and the Deputy Executive Director of the IPA, Daniel Wild. Well, thank you for your time. We're wrapping up a pretty hectic week in Canberra. Let's start, though, with question time. The focus today, of course, those official ABS migration data numbers out. Labor's Big Australia push continues on unabated. Record highs, Daniel. I know the IPA has been crunching the numbers. What have you found?
Well, that's right, Peter. It's record highs, 550,000 net intake over the 12 months to September last year. That is 60% higher than the previous record over a 12-month period to September. And what is clear is that the government is not in control of its migration program, and this is causing immense economic and humanitarian damage to our nation. As you rightly identified at the opening, Peter, we've had 4 consecutive quarters of negative per capita economic growth. The last time that happened was in the early 1980s in the middle of a global economic recession. So as we all know, migration makes the economic pie bigger, but the slice of the pie that everybody in this country is getting is now smaller. The other point that I'd make, Peter, is the government is being highly misleading with the Australian people when it comes to the migration numbers. When you look at the budget figures, what we now know is that last year and this financial year, we are now on track for a surplus of 350,000 migrants compared to the projections in the budget. And we'll see what the government does in May at the next budget. But what is clear is that the government's policy is fundamentally out of step with the expectations of the community.
I think Australians are starting to wake up to the distinction. Australia is not in a recession, but Australians are. That's the difference. And that's why, we're all feeling it tough, feel like we're doing it tough. Everything feels squeezed and you just feel like you're working harder and harder and not getting ahead. Talk to me about the RBA. This might sound like an inside the beltway issue, Soph, but it's a hugely important one given how much the RBA influences mortgages, and obviously that's a big slice of people's incomes. Labor's setting out to, quote, reform the RBA. Now, there's a lot of experts who say this wasn't needed. We've got people like Peta Credlin who says creating this new policy committee to set the rates, to be focused on rates, he reckons that's a worry. 2 former governors of the RBA, Bernie Fraser, Labor appointee, Ian Macfarlane, I think he was a Liberal appointee in the very beginning. Both of them are concerned. Macfarlane even says it's a complete waste of everyone's time. It looks like, too, that the Libs with Angus Taylor may not support this.
Well, Peter, this is a concern and all Australians should be concerned about this. Very interesting comments, particularly from Ian Macfarlane. He was the RBA boss for many years, and I think people should take note of this when he says it is a complete waste of time. But look, the cash rate at the moment, Peter, as you know, is 4.35%. We've had 13 consecutive rate rises. And Australians are very eager to see these rates come down because people are hurting with their mortgage rates at pretty high rates compared to during the COVID pandemic. So I'm pretty concerned by these comments, by these heavy hitters saying that this is a waste of time. And will it actually change anything, Peter? Because we've seen a lot of changes this year already with the RBA, with the press conferences they hold, and also the reduction in the number of cash rate decisions each year, down from 11 decisions to 8. So there's a lot going on, and this is just another layer of change which many are questioning whether or not it's worthy.
And I will add too, a lot of the criticism is that they're concerned that Labor will use this to stack the RBA with their mates, and that's another worry as well. We know, Wang Yi, the Foreign Minister of China, has been in the country, of course, Daniel, this week. Paul Keating's had his meeting today. Penny Wong, of course, officially with the government hat on, she met with him yesterday. All of these people running around saying that there was not a link between the dropping of the anti-dumping action, so letting in a flood now of Chinese-made steel wind turbines, and this appearance in Australia of Wang Yi, just like they dropped opposition to the Port of Darwin being owned by Chinese affiliates when the Prime Minister went to Beijing. They're saying this is not a quid pro quo arrangement. But Dennis Shanahan writes in The Australian, I don't know. He says, I think it is, because before it was even announced, Daniel, we had it reported very much front and centre of the Global Times.
Well, that's right, Peter. I think that the Chinese Communist Party is playing this government like an absolute fiddle. Yes, there's lots of opportunities for cooperation with China when it comes to trade and commerce, but there's also serious economic and national security issues here. You've identified one of them, which is the anti-dumping action that's now being put off by the government. There was also the case of the Chinese-owned nickel mines in Indonesia, which are flooding the market and putting our industry under the pump, and they have, of course, lower wages and far fewer regulations in their way compared to our nation. But what we really need is not just piecemeal talks. We need to have an actual strategic objective of how we're going to reduce our economic reliance on China and pivot to other nations such as India. We know that China is very effective at using its economic leverage to get what it wants. We've seen that with the One Belt, One Road infrastructure projects, including what they try to do in Victoria. We see it with the Made in China 2025, which is their attempt to basically become a monopoly over advanced manufacturing. So there are some serious issues on the economic front, and I'm not sure the government is quite able to string these together into a coherent strategic package for the people of our nation.
So if you listen to this one, there was a bowling club in Sydney's north. There was a local Aboriginal elders that took it on as a native title claim. They got control of the bowling club. It's now fallen into disrepair. There's a tunnel going in. The Western Harbour Tunnel will be built 21 metres below this bowling club. The Aboriginal elders are going to get millions of dollars in a payout regarding the tunnel underneath vacant land. But all the people affected in the area, all the homeowners and businesses who are not Aboriginal, will get nothing. Now, the Land Council says that the Land Rights Act covers land all the way down to the centre of the earth. But that's not how land title works for every other Australian.
Well, Peter, this is a concern for many people, and it seems very unfair. And how far does this go? I mean, the fact that you can say you can go so far underground and make these claims, I think Australians should sit up and take notice of this. And again, it's dividing our nation by race. I think this is very concerning, and I think this could open up a can of worms in other areas and result in perhaps similar actions across New South Wales and potentially across the country.